Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol McKeon, Chair of the Voter Service Committee of the League of Women Voters of Falmouth, and I'd like to welcome you to Candidates Night. This year, instead of coming together with your friends and neighbors, you're attending Candidates Night from home. The candidates, our moderator, and myself are also participating from our homes. The move from a live audience to remote recording has had its challenges, and we are especially grateful this year to our long-term partner in Candidates Night, Falmouth Community Television. Thanks to FCTV's dedicated staff and volunteers, you will have a chance to hear the candidates' views both this evening and in rebroadcast before the election on May 19th. You can find FCTV's schedule for rebroadcasting this program on their website and in the Falmouth Enterprise. And a word about the League. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We're nonpartisan because we never support a candidate or a political party. We're political because we take positions on public policy issues based on our study of independently verified facts. You could learn more about the League by visiting us online at www.lwvf.org. The League encourages informed participation in government. Candidates Night brings together all candidates for contested offices and provides a forum for them to present their views to the public. This year in Falmouth, the only contested office is that of Selectmen. Candidates for uncontested offices have also been invited to present themselves to you tonight in pre-recorded statements, which will run after the Selectmen's Forum. The League thanks all the candidates for the time and energy, thoughtfulness, and civility that they bring to this event. And I also want to thank my colleagues on the League's Voter Service Committee for designing this event and putting together its many pieces in these challenging times. Our moderator tonight is Mindy Todd, WCAI's award-winning radio journalist. We thank her for volunteering her services tonight. Mindy will ask the candidates questions composed by the Voter Service Committee, as well as questions submitted to the League's website by Falmouth residents. And finally, please remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Vote. The polls will be open on May 19th. Appropriate health and safety precautions will be observed, and this may cause some slowdown in the usual process. Our town clerk, Michael Palmer, is encouraging all voters to vote early by mail, and the League encourages you to follow his advice. You can apply to vote early by mail by using the town's website. However you choose to do it, please vote. And now I will turn this program over to Mindy Todd.
Thank you, Carol. Just a bit on our format. The candidates have up to 2 minutes to answer questions, and we'll have 2 minutes for closing comments at the end. Our candidates are Michael Halen, Sam Patterson, and Nancy Taylor. We'll alternate who answers questions first, and we will start in alphabetical order. So, Michael Halen, we will start with you. What makes you the best candidate for Selectmen?
Hey, Mindy, thank you for having me. And I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and FCTV for holding this thing in these difficult times. I think I am the best choice for Selectmen as I listen to the people of the town. There are people in this town who have an issue. They contact me, and I do my best to get things done. It's not always the easiest thing to do. but whenever anyone in town has an issue, has a problem, has a concern, they might not know me, I might not know them, but they call me up, they text me, they get in touch with me from a friend of a friend, and I do my best. I have a management background, an MBA, a nonprofit certificate. I've run my own nonprofit now for 12 years. Never had a negative quarter in all those 12 years. Fiscally responsible. I run several different nonprofit groups with high school teens and other areas. I'm on the North Falmouth School Council, the Falmouth Rec Committee. I've helped get some big projects pushed forward in this town. The senior center, I was part of that, helping them get going. The field at the high school, as part of that. And I think the people in Falmouth are looking for someone they can reach out to and talk to, and know that that person, whether he believes what they believe in or not, will fight for them tooth and nail. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Patterson, what makes you the best candidate for the job?
You have to unmute yourself. I guess the best thing to recognize is that I spent 16 years on the school committee, so I had that prior agreement. And of course, I've just finished 6 years on the select board. Could you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Sam. Yes, we can
All
hear you.
right, confusing some message on the screen. I also was an engineering manager for 18 years, and I was a teacher for 18 years, teaching physics, various grade levels from 7th up through seniors. So I have a broad background. I also have management organization experience, been in town government and finance, been a diplomatic voice. I've been liaison to the Finance Committee, the Community Preservation Committee, the Conservation Commission, and the Affordable Housing Committee, and I've also been a volunteer liaison to the Friends of Knobska Light Board meetings. So I have that background, and I do my best to represent all the constituents of this town, the citizens of the town. I enjoy interacting with people, sharing what knowledge I have, and having a dialogue with people so that we come up with a kind of a mutual understanding and hopefully help me to best represent their interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Taylor, what makes you the best candidate for Selectman?
Thank you, Mindy. I'm a lifelong resident of Falmouth, growing up in Falmouth Heights and graduating from Falmouth High School. I began my career as a guidance counselor at Falmouth High School in 1993, and I retired as the school superintendent in 2018. The school department is the largest town department with over 600 employees at that time and a $43 million budget. I spent the entirety of my career here in Falmouth, and I received my doctorate from Boston College in Educational Leadership in 2018. As a lifelong resident, I really believe in our town. We have excellent schools, we have numerous community and volunteer organizations, and a strong, cohesive town government that includes many people, elected and appointed, who donate their time and talents to make Falmouth a vibrant and responsive community. Our community is currently facing many challenges. In recent years, we've been hit hard by the opioid epidemic, and we are trying to combat the harm that this epidemic brings to our families, our schools, and our community. Now we are in the throes of a viral pandemic for which we do not have a handbook or any protocol to follow. And we do not yet know the level of dislocation and hardship this pandemic will cause. These will continue to be great challenges for us here in Falmouth. It was an honor to serve the Falmouth schools, and now I'm ready to serve our town in a capacity where my knowledge and my skills will make me a productive member of the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question, Sam Patterson, we're going to start with you. Which town issue should be top priority for the board in the year ahead?
Well, I think we don't have any choice but to address the COVID-19 pandemic. It's affecting so many people in town who are without work. It's affecting the health of people, It's affecting our healthcare providers. It's endangering many family members in case a person does become infected. So that's going to be the ongoing challenge, I believe. We're going to face with trying to minimize infection spreading, but I think we also have to start to prepare to plan for large-scale vaccination of our 32,000 residents here in Falmouth. That's a challenge that we're going to have to take on, but of course we're going to have the vaccine kits, we're going to have the protection equipment, and we're going to have the protocols and procedures in hand. But that's going to require a town level organization, and I think the town needs to pick that up as probably the primary responsibility initially. We still have the ongoing issues of our environmental impacts. We have the issues of housing shortages and providing enough housing so that our employees who work here and live in this community, while they're actually working in various capacities, be they teachers, firemen, police, various healthcare workers, it's only fair that they should be able to take advantage of our excellent education program that Nancy mentioned, and be able to work and live and enjoy the benefits that Falmouth has to offer its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Taylor, same question. Oh, Nancy, you got a mic, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with Sam in that the major issue that we will be managing for at least the next year or two to come is this viral pandemic, this COVID-19. It doesn't mean that we don't have other issues like the opioid epidemic and the substance use disorder that this town has been grappling with, affordable housing, making sure that seniors have housing that they can afford, and that our young people who grew up here can really come home and work and afford to come home. Education, supporting our educational system, water, our usage, our wastewater, climate change. We have a variety of issues that we need to manage. But I think the next year or two will be focused on how do we guide Falmouth through this pandemic and coming back with our economy and basically keeping all families safe. So how do we move forward? How do we ensure that the community is safe and that we're ready? And what is our plan going to look like? And I believe that the Board of Selectmen will be charged with beginning to move Falmouth and guide Falmouth through that process.
Thank you. Michael Halen, what do you think is the top issue the board should be looking at this next year?
This isn't going to be a big surprise, but it's going to be the coronavirus and the pandemic right now. One thing I wanted to touch on briefly is that currently there's no vaccine for this the COVID-19. So for the select board to plan a vaccination process without a vaccine seems very premature, because we don't know if that's going to be happening in the next couple months, the next year. So right now we have to focus on is the safety of all of our residents, and not just the physical safety, the emotional, the mental safety, and the safety of our businesses. I just got off a conference call or a Zoom call with the North Falmouth School Council. We talked about what's learning going to be like for the next few months and going into next year, and the emotional impact that some of these younger students have, and also the emotional impact for the seniors, the senior class. They're going to miss their prom, their graduation. We have to address that. We have to push for them to get those milestones in their life. And we have to help small businesses get going, shop local, and keep them up and running. They're the lifeline of our economy.
Thank you. Next question, this time we start with you, Nancy Taylor. What new sources of revenue and/or adjustments would you propose in response to the COVID-19 or coronavirus impact on Falmouth community?
Well, one of the things that I did in preparation for tonight was to go through kind of some budget information, and certainly to have a conversation with our finance director, Ms. Jennifer Mullen, and looking into this this year, the planning for 21, it looks like Falmouth is going to be in good shape. My concern would be moving forward to and planning the budget for 2022. So thinking about what resources and how you would work with money and get new resources to fund Falmouth would be something I would be looking into very carefully in planning the 2022 budget.
Michael Halen, same question.
Yeah, I had a conversation recently with someone at the state regarding the budget, and they're talking about, you know, a 10% decrease from state funding across the board. That's something that we really have no control over. But a lot of those things come from lodging, from restaurant taxes, those kind of things. Now, with you know, many of the events happening this summer, large events happening this summer canceled, we need to think about how we can help out the small businesses in our town. One of my ideas, actually it was not my idea, it was approached to me by someone else, was to close down Main Street and create an outdoor restaurant shopping availability. So people could come in, utilize our local businesses, utilize our local, that's not my phone, utilize the stores, the restaurants, but do so in a safe way, because, you know, we want to be safe, but we also have to make sure that these small businesses who give so much back to our community can get something back as well, because they're struggling too. So it's a balance, and I'm going to you know, talk to some other people in the finance, the small business community, as well as the health community, and figure out the best way to do this. And that's what's really important to us right now.
All right. Sam Patterson, same question.
Yes, I don't know of any alternative revenues. That's, I think, probably a really big challenge we're going to have over the next few years. I think Nancy's description, we're fortunate that our finance director has managed to convince us to put a fair amount of money into reserve funds, and that's going to help us get through FY22. But it's not going to help us out 2 and 3 years. And you know, from what I can tell and what I'm reading from the CDC, this is a matter that we may hit the peak of our infections, but we still have a large part of our community that is still subject to becoming infected. And so this is going to prolong until we finally have vaccinations available to us. And I am somewhat optimistic because there are so many health organizations around the world that are working to find an effective vaccine. And so I know that we can't start a vaccination campaign until that's in place. But I have a son that actually works on designing and manufacturing of large production systems that include robotic arms and laser printers and laser inspection. And I know he's working with several pharmaceutical companies right now to actually prepare a system to put out vaccinations in large quantities to the rest of the United States. So there is infrastructure that's ramping up right now to try to be able to get ready to actually produce the vaccines in large quantities once they actually have been identified to be effective. And of course, there's a testing protocol that has to be abided by to meet the requirements of the FDA. So, but I think the critical thing that we're going to be doing as far as the budget is concerned is basically taking a look at what the essentials are that we want to continue to fund and what we probably should have to cut back on so we can balance the budget. That's going to be a big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michael Halen, we start with you this time. As a selectman, what actions would you propose to address the looming threats of rising seas and more powerful storms, looking to climate change?
Climate change. So I've been saying this now for a few years, and I'm going to say it again. It's called Breakwaters. Now, Breakwater is, and I spoke to some people out in Worcester at Holden Labs about these breakwaters. Best in the world, Holden Labs. And what they do is that you put a breakwater off the shore, so as the waves come in, they hit the breakwaters, they don't get all the way to the beach, it stops erosion. And in some communities, they're actually using these breakwaters as tourist attractions. Not this year, as we all know, but in the future, you create a breakwater, it becomes a breakwater boardwalk. People can walk out there, go fishing. It helps with the erosion of local beaches. Now, it does take some money, but there are government grants you can get to do this stuff. It's a huge idea to help with the erosion, and it also helps with tourism. And that is, I've been pushing this for years. I would love to see something like this happen in Falmouth. The only thing that's stopping it is money. but I think that we can get some grants and kind of move forward with that. And once it happens, it will bring tourists more money and it will help with the erosion.
Thank you. Sam Patterson, same question.
Well, I think this is a challenge that we're going to be fighting continuously. We're going to be adapting. In some cases, Mother Nature is going to take its own course. Of course, we have limitations that imposed on us by the state that don't allow us to use hardening necessarily. So we have to work with the state. If you put in hardening revetments and what have you, one place, you're starving sand somewhere else as the sand migrates along the coast. So it's a very complicated question. I think it would be nice if we could start actually remediating the amount of carbon dioxide that we're emitting into the atmosphere, because that is the source of ocean expansion. As the water warms up, it expands, and therefore sea levels rising. I was quite surprised at that, but that is actually from one of our Woods Hole oceanographic physicists. And of course, the other thing is that a lot of extra water vapor is put into the air, which is essentially stored energy, and that makes the severity of storms much worse. I think we're going to have to be extremely careful about adapting, and of course, getting people to really kind of retreat from the coast in some places. But I think we should be able to strategically protect some of the infrastructure that we have with, be it breakwaters or jetties, that will allow us at least to preserve an investment that we make for, let's say, only 50 years. That 50-year time period actually may be a valuable period of time where we can continue to enjoy the coast and beaches much like they are today.
Thank you. Nancy Taylor, same question.
Thank you. This is a huge problem. It's international. And what we need to think about is the impact in Falmouth. And I think about questions like, will we always have Minot Beach or Surf Drive Beach? And certainly these are challenges to address. And I think it's really important to remember that we have our Coastal Resiliency Committee that continues to look at this issue and make recommendations. We consult with the very best experts. We have the best experts in our scientific community, and we're told to reach out and consult with. And we're just going to have to continue to address on a case-by-case basis moving forward.
Sam Patterson, your turn to go first. We already face a shortage of affordable housing, which is likely to be exacerbated by economic consequences of the epidemic. What steps, in cooperation with local organizations and the state government, should the town take to address this problem?
Well, we've had some success. I think we probably have built over 70 units and with different numbers of bedrooms in each of the units over the last 6 years. I think the Affordable Housing Committee has continued to actually fund the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. I happen to be on the working group that vets the applications for subsidies that can be provided by that fund. I think we need to continue to look at funding that. It's not realistic for private developers to develop a project and try to break even at least, and of course they need to make some profit. It's not exorbitant because it's controlled, but they need to be able to invest in developing various properties and creating affordable housing. It is important to our whole economic vitality. Employers need to have employees, and employees should be able to live in the towns where they work. It really bothers me to see the traffic backed up at the hospital light all the way up Palmer Avenue to the lane drop on 28 of people that have to literally live in Wareham or South Plymouth in order to be able to work in Falmouth. So, it's a constant problem. It's not just local to Falmouth. The Cape Cod Commission has studied this problem and pretty much advised us that we're looking at eventually having a kind of a stalling of our economy if we can't provide sufficient affordable housing for the employees that actually work here. I'd like to see the town literally explore maybe using municipal bonds to put more money into the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund so that there will be more subsidies available so we could build housing at a little bit faster rate.
Thank you. Nancy Taylor, same thing.
Thank you. So we have a couple vehicles by which we are addressing housing in Falmouth. We have the Housing Corp, we have the Housing Trust, we have the Housing Authority. And if you think about it, we have 2 units already going up right now as we speak. There's the one on Spring Bars Road, and that's 40 units. And then we have units going up on Gifford Street for workforce for housing. And the CPC this year committed $1.3 million to affordable housing, more than they've ever done. And so I think that Falmouth is demonstrating that they're willing to, A, acknowledge that there's an issue, and B, to support these venues by committing funds to this. And so I think what we need to do is to continue to support that. And I think we need to continue to monitor housing for our elderly folks and making sure that that's affordable and available. And also, again, for young people who want to come back to Falmouth as teachers, as firefighters, as police officers, making sure that they can come home and afford to come home. One of the challenges of being a superintendent and hiring new young teachers was the fact that they could not afford to live here, and a base salary as a brand new teacher did not meet the requirements for housing in Falmouth. So I'm very much in support of Falmouth and the Board of Selectmen in the town continuing to support affordable housing.
Thank you. Michael Halen, same question to you.
Thank you so much. I have 2 kids. I have 3 kids, but 2 kids are in Falmouth Public Schools, and one of their teachers lives off Cape, and it's very difficult for to her to get over here during snowstorms and that kind of things. And it's sad when someone is dedicated to our kids in our town can't live in this town. Recently, there's been affordable housing being put up, and I'm more concerned with the types of affordable housing being put up. Single units, studio apartments, those kind of things. Those aren't attracting families to our town. A family with 2 kids, 3 kids, they can't fit in a studio apartment. Now, workforce housing, that's fine, but do we want apartment complexes full of just workforce, or do we want to make Falmouth a great community with families and kids and the elderly all living together, enjoying our Main Street, our beaches? I would like to see a way to get the affordable housing to come here is to bring more programs, more fields, different activities in town that would want people to come here. If you have activities, small businesses are thriving, all these stuff for young families, then businesses are going to come here and it's going to grow. And that's the best way, I think, to get this affordable housing under control, to have affordable housing that families, and then, families can live here, work here, love it here like I do. And then also the elderly housing, which might be a little bit different, single units, but those have to be close to downtown, shopping, the RTA, those kind of things. We have to rethink this whole process a little bit.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to move on to some questions from the public. Nancy, we start with you this time. Would you support a change in the structure of the select board, increasing the number of members to 5 elected at large to 7 elected by region/precinct, with the purpose of improving representation and opportunity for engagement of all citizens from our diverse villages?
That's a really good question that I haven't really considered or thought about. And I'd need to know a little bit more about how that would equally represent. And I'd also be curious to know why people think we do need to increase the number of people on the select board. So I don't know that I would support or not support. I'm not sure that I have enough information to make an informed decision around that.
All right, Michael Halen, what are your thoughts on that?
So what I understand, instead of going from 5 at large, you're going to go from 5 from different regions. Now we have 9 precincts, So those precincts would have to get changed to 7. That being said, I think that would be representational government. I feel that right now there are certain areas of our town who don't feel that they're represented as well as they could be as far as other areas of town, not just areas, but demographics. It's an interesting idea. I have to look at it more often, look at it a little bit more deeply and see how that would work. But when you have, a select board, not necessarily now, but, in the past have been select boards of the 5, 4 might live in one part of town, whether it be East Falmouth, West Falmouth, Woods Hole, whatever it is. And then some people who don't live in that area might not think they have their voices heard. And that is the one thing that, I would hope to bring to the select board. I live in West Falmouth. I grew up down the Heights, born and raised, Falmouth High School. If someone from T-Ticket, Woods Hole, East Falmouth, anyone calls me, I'm responding to their phone call and I'm representing them. It's not where I live, but I know that some people do feel that way. It's something to look into, but I think that if the select board equally represented everyone in town, that question would not have come up.
Thank you. Sam Patterson, same question.
Well, I guess I'm the incumbent, so, but I am going to defend the way our government is structured right now. I think the various precinct representation is represented in our town meeting. And they're the ones that basically decide on the budget and the various articles that come before us, depending on whether they benefit. But I think that really the select board should be representing all of the citizens in Falmouth, and it should be geographically oriented. And that's the way I look at it in terms of my responsibility. I don't see myself as representing Woods Hole or West Falmouth or North Falmouth or East Falmouth or Hatchville. I see myself as really representing all of the citizens at the same time. And I think that's an important attitude that the select board should have. And if we were to divide up sort of our loyalties to different areas of the town, I think it would be counterproductive in terms of the deliberations that we have. We certainly are on TV on a regular basis, and we're open to being criticized, and people are welcome to come and participate in the public comment periods and then speak to all of the various items on the agenda at the appropriate time. So I think people have the opportunity to voice their concerns if they feel like the select board is not representing all of the citizens of the town. But I honestly take pride in making sure that that is my perspective at all times. So I think the precinct orientation is best represented by the town meeting members who are elected by the various precincts.
Thank you. Michael Halen, another question from the public. Our federal and state governments are developing economic recovery programs. Please describe the role of our town government in supporting and sustaining local small business, considering the economic challenges in the aftermath of the pandemic.
Well, I know that the EDC last week just released, I believe, a $2 million revolving fund where small businesses can ask for loans to help their businesses, and then each month when they pay it back, another business can apply. I think it's a good start. However, $2 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's not really, considering the amount of business that some of these places are going to lose this summer with the lack of tourism. That's why, once again, I'm going to go back to this idea of how can we get people in town to go out to eat, to go to shops, and do it safely. It is extremely sad to me that I drive by Walmart once a week when I have to go shopping at Shaw's for my parents who are compromised, and Walmart is packed full of people. And you go down Main Street in the local hardware stores, the local boutiques, no one's in there because Walmart's essential, but they're not. But to me, the Main Street small businesses are essential to our town. They are the heart and soul of our community, and they do so much for us, and we need to do more for them through this pandemic. And I would like to work with the small businesses and think about some compromises of what we can do to keep people safe, at the same time have people shopping. I have been going out almost every day to different small businesses, buying food, donating it, doing what I can. to help them going, to help the first responders. And I think that we need to do more. We need to have some talks with the chamber, the small businesses, and do it in a safe way, but also a way that these small businesses can get some reprieve from this.
Thank you. Sam Patterson, your thoughts?
Yes, well, we did have a meeting this just the day before yesterday to further pursue that option of basically what EDIC was asking the select board to do was to not take the ground rent portion that would be coming to the town from the solar array project up on the town's landfill. Town council weighed in on this, and there's not a clear path at this point for redirecting that. In fact, the intergovernmental agreement was approved by town meeting, and so it's kind of sealed, and there's no way for us to immediately respond. Now, let me say that the select board, we were all looking for a way to do exactly what Michael is saying, is to find some way to provide loans to the small business so they can support their employees to some extent or pay the rent so they can stay in business, because this is not a short-term thing. We're going to be involved in this for an extended period of time. And I'll tell you, I lay awake at night worrying about how people are going to survive through this. There's going to be a lot of people moving in with family members, I think, just to get by. It's a tough time economically for a lot of people. We don't have an answer to that yet, but it's got to fit within the regulations of the state of Massachusetts. And that means that we can't arbitrarily take public money and give it to private companies without some kind of controls. And that's where the issue is at this point. So we're pursuing it, but there are a lot of legal questions that have to be addressed before we can even propose to a town meeting, whenever that happens, a program that might actually help out our small businesses here in Falmouth.
Thank you. Nancy, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to agree with both Sam and Michael in a couple of different places. First of all, I think we do have to bring it back to the pandemic. There is not going to be any magic bullet, either from the state or the federal governments. And when I looked at the EDIC loan program and I read a little bit about that, I thought on the surface it looked really good, and it looked helpful, and certainly no one is questioning the need of our small businesses here in town. But I think the select board and both the town manager and town council did the prudent thing by saying we need to look at this more. There needs to be more research on this, and we're not prepared to move forward on that. So I think we're in this for the long term. I don't think, like I said, I don't think there's a magic bullet. There has to be a plan. And the idea of closing Main Street and allowing those businesses to conduct themselves in a way that they could use the entire Main Street without any traffic to perhaps reopen slowly and practice social distancing, I think is a really good idea. But we don't have a plan yet. And I think we have to go back to looking at this pandemic with a laser focus and coming up with the health and safety plan, looking at the vaccinations before we can move forward on anything.
Thank you. Sam, this question, we'll start with you. What suggestions do you have for moving the town of Falmouth closer to being a green community? Would you support significantly reducing the town's carbon emissions as one step in that direction?
Well, I think that is the challenge, not just for Falmouth, but for the entire country. As I mentioned, the more carbon dioxide that we emit into the atmosphere, the more of a blanket we essentially are putting into the atmosphere, which holds the heat from the sun against the surface of the earth, therefore heating up the oceans and the land as well. And the fact that the oceans have increased in temperature almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 50 years, and that requires an enormous amount of thermal energy to change the temperature of water. Takes an awful lot of thermal energy. That's the siren song going off to warn us that we have to do something. And then, as I said, it's producing more water vapor, which means that we have more violent storms doing more damage, the hurricanes, the tornadoes. You can pretty much say that thermodynamically, its origins are in global warming. And being a green community means that we're taking steps to try to reduce that carbon footprint, if you will. I'm very much in favor of that, not for my sake, because I probably won't be around long enough to suffer the worst consequences, but my children will be around, and grandchildren, and future generations. And I think we have a responsibility to make sure that the environment we pass on to them is one that allows them to survive and thrive economically and socially.
Thank you. Nancy Taylor, same question.
So I think Falmouth has taken some steps thus far, and I think they've been some good steps. I mean, I think about what the EDIC has done for solar out in the landfill. I think that was a really good move. We banned things like plastic bags, although there's an issue with that right now. And I also wonder about town vehicles being electric vehicles. So I think that we need to continue to look at our carbon footprint and come up with even small steps that can make big changes in that carbon footprint. And yes, I would support changes to lower carbon emission.
Thank you. Michael Halen.
Thank you. I know that, I believe it was last town meeting, we voted to cut a piece of the Barnstable County Fairgrounds for solar. And I think that these large solar arrays, a public-private partnership, are a huge thing. Not only are they, lowering our emissions and going towards a green community, but they're also providing some tax relief when it comes to the money brought in. Then I think the town meeting prior to that, we approved a couple of electric cars for different departments in the town. I think that if we can move towards more electric cars towards town departments, that would be great. I myself have solar panels on my house, and it was the best investment I ever made. They got paid off in 4 years, and now I'm just getting free electricity, and it's helping the environment. It's a win-win. I think stuff like that would be ideal if we can, the solar arrays, and you see them up on 44 in Middleborough towards Plymouth that way. If we have a piece of land that we can put the solar arrays, it's helping us move towards the green, and it's also bringing in some revenue for the town, which in the next couple of years is going to be much needed to do.
Right, thank you. We're going to move to closing statements now, and Nancy Taylor, it is your turn to go first.
Great. And I would like to first thank the League of Women Voters of Falmouth for hosting this event, and certainly FCTV for producing it for us. Guiding our town through this COVID-19 pandemic has to be our top priority. In addition to this major challenge and other major challenges to our health and public safety, there are ongoing challenges of providing housing that young families, the local workforce, and senior citizens can afford, maintaining quality schools, cleaning up our estuaries, and preparing for sea level rise. The Selectmen in their current strategic plan are covering these issues and others in their 6 strategic priorities over the next 5 years. I would like to be part of the town's planning to grapple with and solve these issues. I believe we need town leaders who will continue to work as a cohesive board and to carefully and thoughtfully guide our town through this pandemic and all of the other issues that are in front of us right now. I hope you will support my candidacy and vote for me, Nancy Taylor, on May 19th. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Halen.
Yes, thank you once again for having me, the League of Women Voters, FCTV, and thank you to Nancy and Sam for doing this virtual debate. As a select board, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I will listen to everyone in town. You come, you ask me a question, you have something you want to happen, I will listen, I will talk to you, whether I agree with you or I don't agree with you, I will listen and help you as much as I can. I'm born and raised in Falmouth High School. I have 2 kids in the school system now and 1 going in next year. The other thing I want to say about myself is when this pandemic hit, a lot of people didn't know what to do. A lot of people are struggling, and I have tried my best to help out wherever I can. Masks came into effect today, being mandatory, and a lot of people don't have masks. I've been purchasing masks with my my own personal money and donating them to groups in town, reaching out to people, different volunteer organizations, saying if you need a mask to continue what you're doing in the community, let me help you do that. It's just something that I do. I think that's, you know, important right now to come together as a community, to work together. And I'm going to throw it out here on this forum. If anyone needs help with masks, hand sanitizer, anything like that, if I can provide it, if I can get it, I will help you out. And that's my pledge to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam Patterson.
Yes, well, I agree with everybody. The pandemic is the first thing on our minds. We've got to continue to minimize the spreading of the infection. And then, you know, I do believe it's time to start planning. I don't think it's too early at all, because it's going to be a very complicated process to coordinate the efforts of our healthcare providers throughout this town and the state. So yes, the vaccine isn't available, but it's going to be here someday, and we need to make sure that we can actually vaccinate on a large scale. We have 32,000 residents, and until we get most of them vaccinated, the disease is going to continue to propagate. My next priority is the day-to-day needs, much like Mike has mentioned, of our residents here and our neighbors. And you know, that includes healthcare, food, water, electricity, fire and ambulance services, police protection, and many other community service that we need and need to continue to provide. And that's you know, the select board contributes to that. Next, we need to actually make sure that we're providing for the education and communication of for our citizens, and that includes children and adults. It's an investment we're going to make for our future social and economic vitality. So we can't short ourselves too much in terms of education and communication. And we know that some people have been challenged in getting, children in particular, getting access to Chromebooks and laptops of various sorts so they could continue online education. But I do want to emphasize that our budget challenges are going to be horrendous, and it's going to require a lot of work. I guess addressing all of these challenges requires teamwork, coordination, and problem solving. And I offer my knowledge, organization management, and 22 years as a town leader to all of you to continue to serve you on the select board. And I thank you very much for this opportunity and your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you to Nancy Taylor, Michael Halen, and Sam Patterson, our candidates for 2 seats on the select board. And thanks for taking part in this experiment, our Zoom format this evening. We appreciate that. Luckily, we didn't have any terrible dropouts or mistakes here, so thank you. Thanks to the League of Women Voters of Falmouth and FCTV for bringing us this form this evening. Stay tuned for candidate statements, which will be coming up next. Thanks for joining us.